Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's installation in our interview series, I get to sit down with a longtime friend and a current client. I've really been looking forward to this conversation and I hope that you enjoy. Awesome. Well, Taylor, normally I have folks introduce themselves, but this time I would like to do some of that introduction myself. I'd like the opportunity to do some of that edification myself. So you're a longtime friend, meaning that we've actually done business together in the past. Our families have vacationed together. The kids have played together. We've known each other for 10 years, and you've been a client for several of those years. Once I became a professional in the infinite banking space and started to work directly with clients myself, you were one of the absolute first. So I have really been looking forward to this conversation. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jesse, for the introduction. Yeah, we have been together for quite some time and we've seen our kids grown up together. We play together. We've always been in business together. And like you said, when your business endeavors have always kind of been my business endeavors, we've always kind of been hand in hand and always been alongside each other. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be on this today with you.
I love it. Actually, I remember one more element of, shared background, just listening to you recap that, is you come from an education background as well. So you've been a teacher in North Carolina and I've been a teacher in North Carolina. It's really neat. Okay, so do this. Let's go back to what's going to be your beginning leading up to knowing infinite banking and doing infinite banking, right? So say anything that you would like to just about your background so people can get a feel for who you are.
Okay. Well, my name's Taylor. My background is I used to be a teacher, just kind of like you, Jesse. I used to be an elementary school teacher. I did that for several years straight out of college. I did go to college in Wilmington in North Carolina. And then right out of college, I decided to um, get a job, get a house, get married, and have kids, just like everybody else in this world. That's what I was taught to do. And then I started teaching. I enjoyed teaching very much. But then I started to have two little kids, and it became quite a challenge to be able to provide for my kids as a school teacher. And they were very young. So, of course, I had to put them in daycare. Daycare became quite expensive at that point in time. So at that point, a couple years after college, when I married and had these kids, I quickly realized that teaching was not going to support my family. That sole income teachers are amazing people who just love to help children and things like that. But I quickly learned that the income teachers get does not suffice what they do. um, so a couple years into teaching, I realized that I was struggling. And I looked for different outlets to get some income coming in because I wanted to spend those times with my children. And I felt like I didn't have that opportunity. So over the years, I just kind of learned that the go to school, get a job, get married, and have kids was not ideal in today's economy. So from there, I started looking for different outlets. I met you several years ago, I think almost 10 years ago, actually,
Yeah, 2015, right?
2015. Yep, 2015. And you were doing some business adventures, and I decided to hop along with that because I loved what business endeavors you were doing at that point, and that excited me. And of course, I needed that extra stream of income. So I was definitely all over it. I saw your great visions and I was all for it. So we kind of started business together right there over the years and continued that relationship. And our children were pretty close to the same age. So we kind of let the kids grow up together. We saw each other on a regular, probably weekly basis. And then over the years, a few years into knowing each other, you asked me to come to your home to look at something. And of course, we've been in business and we've known each other for years. So I was all for it. Um, And then once we got to your home, you introduced this thing you called infinite banking. And that really opened up my eyes at that point. I think that year was 2019, I want to say, about 5, 6 years ago, when you showed me this concept. And when I saw it, I was all open for it. I didn't completely understand it, but I knew what I was doing right now was not working. I knew working a job as a school teacher, I couldn't take care of my kids properly. We were financially struggling. So when you showed me this, I was like, okay, this is different. Seems too good to be true. But I trust Jesse and I'm all for it to try something different because what I was doing was not working. We were living paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't afford daycare at this point. I was honestly going to be a stay at home mom and try to work things out that way because between the teacher pay and daycare, I just couldn't afford it. I was working 40 hours a week to pay daycare. So something was off and I had to do something different. And you showed me this, and I was like, I'm all for it. Let's try it. Let's do it. And I haven't regretted it since. So that's kind of where we've kind of started off. And we've kind of just grown together over the years. And you've always been an amazing coach and mentor and guided me along this while I've learned through this journey and learned pieces by pieces and just jumps right in. And I couldn't be more pleased.
I love it. I appreciate that. Sometimes, here's something I've noticed because I recently released my 1000th video on the channel. You also had some nice things to say there. It can be kind of hard for me to hear nice things about myself. So I'm grateful. I want to say that I'm grateful, but also at the same time, it's an interesting feeling, is what I'm saying. So I have one burning question because I can't remember for sure, actually. So when you were exposed to infinite banking, and I forgot some questions I want to ask you about prior to that, but when you saw infinite banking from me, was it from me? Was I at the front of a room? Were we sitting across the table? Did I have a different speaker? Like, I actually am not sure about that. Can you remember?
A great question. So you invited me to your home, and there was maybe 10 or so other people there at that point. And you actually introduced us to Brent Kessler. So Brent Kessler was the one who kind of went over everything and explained in about 45 minutes or so what infinite banking concept was. So you were not directly in front of us, but we had been in your home many times, and when you asked us to come over, of course we did. We're always open ears and ready to learn something new. So when you introduced Brent Kessler, I was very pleased to hear him. I haven't heard of him before, but when he started speaking, it really opened up my ears. And I strongly believed he was a very powerful mentor for you. So I wanted to be all ears for him at that point.
Cool. So I was thinking of that time in particular, and we did. We had a lot of family there. We had close business friends and relationships invited as well. And it was so early on that I wasn't an agent at that time. I was just a client and a customer, and on that personal side of the journey myself. And I'm like, oh yeah, my family needs to know this. My friends need to know this. My business partners need to know this. This is huge, game changing, and I did remember that. So that's where I was. I was well, packing out rooms was not something new to us, in the former business that we were in the travel space, and the timeline's kind of interesting there, of course, as well, just because of everything that later happened in the travel space and industry because of COVID and 2020 and everything there, which is right at where I did transition also into professionally working with folks. Neat. I remember that time as well. So tell me this. I'm always curious about, and it's not necessarily related to infinite banking, but going towards college, did you have a strong desire towards, education and teaching earlier on, or was that just more random when you're picking what to study in college? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so when I first got out of college, I had some few ideas of what I wanted to do. But honestly, at 18, how do you have a clue on what exactly you want to do in life, you know? So when I went into college, I had a few options. That first year, I was very open and tried several different outlets on what I wanted. But ended up going with teaching. My family is teachers. So I kind of followed in their footsteps. My father was a high school teacher in the county that we were in. So after a year or so in college, I took a couple courses. I was like, yeah, I do enjoy teaching. I love children. I always have loved children. My goal was always to be a mom and to do something incorporated with children because children are just my passion. So I hopped into elementary education going into college and kind of followed my parents' footsteps and what they told me to do. You know, they told me I had to go to college. Once I got my degree, whatever I wanted, then I go and I get a house, then I get married, and then I have kids and settle down. So that was my goal. That was my plan when I was in college. I wanted to get in, pick my degree, and then get out as quickly as possible to start my family. I've always been a mother at heart. So I always wanted to start that family as soon as possible. So I got done with school in about 2.5 years. So I got my 4 year degree. I worked really hard to get that so I could start teaching immediately. So I did have that goal in mind. I know I wanted to help people. I know I wanted children in my life. So that direction kind of led me towards teaching.
I love it. And you've got three of your own, and like you said, they're really similar in their age to ours right now. You know, on the financial side of teaching, I would say I've felt this for a long time from having been a teacher myself, and I reflect highly on my government teachers that I had growing up, even though we feel strongly about that now, and we homeschool because we want as much time as we can have with our children. But teachers are severely overworked and severely underpaid. And that wash situation that you were describing earlier of, well, okay, if I'm pursuing my passion here in educating young people, but the compensation for that is essentially getting consumed by taking care of my own children, then it's a hard financial trade-off to account for. So I can understand that aspect as well. And it doesn't help on top of that North Carolina at the time when you and I were teachers, we were like almost at the virtual bottom of the whole 50 states on teacher income. It was pitiful. So I think it's a strong argument for why schools should be privatized, much like other things in our life, to include banking, because it would be more profitable for the teachers. Um, cool. So then tell me this. There you are, working lady, young mom. You see this idea from a friend in me that you said you trust. And I love that. I'll say this while I'm thinking about it too now, Taylor, that's a very gratifying thing to hear. But also, when I, let's say, get somebody on my calendar that's a referral from a friend or from a current client, and they say, well, I'm on the phone with you because I trust so and so, and they say that they trust you. I love that. It's gratifying to hear, but I also try and paint the picture up front really quickly by sharing Nelson's philosophy that, well, when the individual knows what's going on, that individual is going to know what to do. So business with me is not built on trust, and yet it is. Meaning, I'm not just looking to take someone on as a client on blind trust, is what I mean. I love it if they say that they trust so and so, and that person trusts me. Beautiful, wonderful. I'm appreciative, right? But this is about becoming your own banker. So it can't just be this thing of, oh, well, this is going to be a financial, person in my life who's going to set me up. And it's just built on blind trust. So I'm saying that while I'm thinking about it. But such was the case. You're, in a comfortable place with people that you know, but there is somebody at the front of the room laying out a series of new ideas, right? So I would love to know, what do you recall that you loved? What do you recall that you weren't sure about or doubted, or that you later had to work through? What questions did you have at that point in time when you first saw infinite banking?
I think that's a great question. So, trying to remember back, when I first saw it, like I said, I did trust you, but I did not know the person in front of me. I had never met him before, never heard of him before. So, I was kind of just open ears, trying to hear him out, what he had to say. Again, because I did trust you. So, I knew if you knew him, then he was probably a good person. However, he did explain several things that I did not understand. It kind of went over my head at first. I was like, okay, this is completely different than what I've been taught. However, I know what I've been taught is not working. So I was kind of at that point where as he was explaining, I was like, okay, this is different. This is good, but different. And I kind of had to just keep those ears open and hear him out and see what he had to say and kind of go from there. So as he was kind of going through it, I did generate several questions in my mind. And, one of the top ones is, is this too good to be true? Because this sounds like one of those things where, they say one thing and then it ends up being something completely different and it doesn't work for me. But then after his conversation, he handed me several, notes and books that I can look into and study for myself. So that's what really helped me in that process because yes, I didn't know him. I did trust you, yes. But at the same time, I did not fully understand everything that he described. So I was kind of more of an open book, but I wanted to learn more and understand for myself and make sure this was a good decision for me. So looking into that, once I heard him, I feel like he gave me the tools necessary to do my own research, to do my own understanding and see how this would fit into my life. And I think that was a great outlet besides just, blind trusting you, kind of like you said. Because I hear people all the time and I do trust you. However, I like to have my knowledge and my understanding of things. So, him giving those outlets and being able to answer my own questions really helped make me choose to move forward with this, if that makes sense. Because I could take my time, I could look and see how it correlated into my life. He definitely did I think it was kind of the illustration of buying a car. I think that's one of his most famous ones is, how do you traditionally buy a car and how you could buy a car using this method. So I really had to dig deep into that because I did need a car at that point. And I was before the meeting, I was trying to figure out how I was going to afford this car because I had two children. I needed a bigger car at this point. My little car was not doing what it needed to do. And I needed room to grow with my family. So when he started talking about, how you finance a car, I was definitely open to learning more and understanding more about that. So I did my own research. I bought the book Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. I did my own YouTube videos and research and made sure that this is something that I wanted to step forward into to understand and see that how it changed my life and how it will change my life for my kids. My kids have always been my number one. So that was probably another question that I did get into when he was showing me this because my kids have always been priority one for me. So I'm always looking at ways to benefit them in the future. How is this going to help my children? How is this going to help me financially be able to homeschool my kids, to be there for my kids and not have to work 40 plus hours a week teaching and struggling to still pay bills where I can't spend as much time with them. I can't get them the things that they need or constantly worrying or stressed like that. So I think him being able to give me outlets to dive into it and learn myself and take that time and not be pressured into how quickly I needed to step into it, which was also very nice. Being able to have my own personal time to sit down and understand everything was very impactful for me because I'm a very, how do you call it, Jesse?
Oh, I'm going to let you say, don't trust me to say something here. It's going to be sarcastic, you could be sure.
I'm a very tedious person. I like my ducks in a
Detailed.
row. I like to be organized. I like to see the numbers, understand the numbers, rearrange numbers. So being able to have that time to do that, I really appreciated. But I quickly learned that it's something I 100% wanted to do. And even though I didn't understand it all, I did know that it was something that I needed to do at that point. It's something I saw as an outlet for me and my family and my kids. So I jumped right in after that brief research of my own and seeing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there and give a descriptor, but I figured it'd be best if you did. The saying, and I don't know where I picked it up from, or I would say, but trust but verify came to mind when you were saying some of the things that you were. Trust but verify. Nothing wrong with trusting folks, but there's also nothing wrong with verifying things for yourself. So, a couple of questions about how you verified the concept or the different aspects of this concept, because it really is it was for me a whole string of new things, right? Because when I was exposed to infinite banking, I'm learning about banking for the first time. Then I'm learning about privatized banking and what that could look like, being a banker yourself, taking over the banking function in your life. But then you're learning about life insurance as well, and you're learning about compounding, and you're learning about finance, and you're learning about EVA, economic value added. And for me, it was just, there was a lot more that was new than was known. Okay, so I'm curious, in seeing that presentation, you had this overall general feeling of, okay, I'm trusting, but I got to verify. It sounds too good to be true. So what then, after that, did you both, here are my two questions, get from the book itself? So I'd love to know what you got out of the book. What did you like out of the book? What were you not sure of right away from the book? What was something that you had to work through, read again, think through, have a conversation about, anything? And then I'd like to ask about, anything else that you found online, because I, at that time, was also consuming everything that I could find online. So I'd really like to know about that difference from you. What'd you like and have to work through from the book? What did you like and have to work through maybe that you heard online? And then how did those match up?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it in the beginning was honestly connecting with other people that were honestly already implementing this in their life. I think that was a big influence on that as well. Looking into their life and how it worked for them and understanding that method and, how their progress went over the years, but also into Nelson Nash's book. He had, those golden rules and those 5 rules that we always want to follow, and I think those stuck out to me the most, and understanding them is a process. I'm pretty sure I read the book at least a few times a year. And I've been doing that for years at this point. So I feel like I'm always still learning something new, even though I've been into this several years now and I've read the book several times now. I always reread it. And I feel like every time I reread it, there's something new and good information that I can kind of soak in, which is really great. But, his 5 excuse me, his 5 rules of thinking long term was really beneficial for me, because I've always kind of had that mindset. I know I've had small businesses of my own, and when you first start a small business, you're not making that initial money that you want to in the beginning. You're putting in a lot of work for very little return. But in the long run, if you think long term in your business, it's eventually going to pay off. So that one really stuck out to me a lot. As well as with my children, thinking long term for them, because I was at that point in my life where I was struggling and I was thinking, this can't be the only way. And I would hate to see my kids struggle at this day and age too, because I taught them the same methods and then they end up struggling just like me. So I wanted to change that too. So that was kind of an eye opener, just thinking long term, thinking of just the way you think, generational wealth, opening your mind up to different concepts and things like that. Because my financial literacy before meeting IBC was very limited. I did not know much. I knew that I worked, I made an income, and then I gave away that income to pay bills and support just everyday life. And I knew that was not the way to go. I was struggling at that point, and I knew there had to be a better way. So opening that book and reading through it and, repeatedly just going through that book. Sometimes I'd reread the chapter, even though I just read it, just to kind of understand it better and view his outtake on how he implemented this concept and how our traditional society and financial literacy is just struggling, is it's in a bad spot where everyone, I feel like, is realizing that this isn't always the best way to go. There's got to be something different. So that book really helped me open my eyes to the concepts of financial literacy and understanding. But it is a lot. So like I said, I reread the book multiple times, and I'm still learning things on a regular. But that book honestly is more like a Bible at this point, when it comes to finances. So I call it my financial Bible. So if I'm ever struggling, or I don't understand how to implement something into my business in relation to IBC, I reach out to the book. I read through Nelson's Nash. I try to understand how I could go about this so that it benefits me in the long run. I'm not stealing from myself. I'm not borrowing from the bank, where that was a big issue of mine, where when I had to start over a couple years ago, I didn't have the proof of income for any loans. I didn't have the good credit for loans. So I was kind of stuck. And so reaching out to the book and realizing there's different ways that I can do this, the financial system of not using a bank and using your own policy and paying yourself first, to be able to afford these things in the future has really, really benefited me.
So I love that. That was beautiful. You gave me the book side of the answer, but you also looked online some. So what was different maybe about what you found online that didn't match up with the book, or what did match up with the book? And do you remember, who and where you would have listened to, and how helpful was it to you?
Yeah. So well, the first outlet I went to was Brent Kessler. Just because I had seen him in person. I At this point, you knew him, so I was like, okay, he has the source, he has the information. So I first started with Brent Kessler, and I kind of dug into how it worked for him, how he got online, how he started this, how he got out of debt, and then kind of branched away from that, from his clients. I kind of stayed on his nook for a little while, because there wasn't a ton out there at that point. I feel like it's exploded in the past couple years, but 6 7 years ago, not all the sources were there. So I feel like I did do my research online. I did YouTube videos with what I could find on it. I did follow Brent Kessler very heavily. But recently, over the past few years, I've kind of followed you more and more, which has been very beneficial. Because there's so many different YouTube videos out nowadays. There's a lot of different people who spread a lot of different things. And I want to make sure that I am getting a reliable source. I want to make sure, the information given to me is accurate. So reading those books and comparing them to YouTube videos really kind of makes a difference, and making sure that you're on the same page. Because internet can be wild.
It
sometimes
can
in
be
this
very
day and
wild.
age now. And you have very many different people that are saying different things. So, really comparing the two and reading different books, not just Nelson Nash's books, but different books and different people and meeting those people and going to live events and just getting a grasp on those things and connecting those two together, and making sure your sources are right, your information's right, you're learning things and asking those questions. I really love one-on-one with people. YouTube can only get you so far. You've got to have those connections to ask those burning questions at that point. So I did have a lot of burning questions where I would connect with either you or Brent or Hannah or Jonah or anyone that I could get connected to just to ask those questions and understand it better. And I'm pretty sure I honestly went to at least a meeting or a connection time at least once a month just to grasp the concept, learn from it again, rehear the information, and just feed my brain on understanding and using the concept to the best of my ability.
I love it. Actually, that reminds me because when you were talking earlier about the general feeling of this could be too good to be true, there are people online who convey parts of this concept in a way to where it leads to an individual that starts to work with somebody like that to figuring out unknowingly when it comes application time that they're actually going to be using a life insurance product. And I can understand maybe not leading with life insurance because when you understand what's going on, you'll know what to do. It is more about the process than the product, right? Like if somebody just adopts Nelson's principles, I don't care if it's our relationship with our children, Taylor. I think that if we think long range when it comes to developing relationships with our children, and if we capitalize in those relationships, meaning spend meaningful time, serve them, speak words of affirmation to them, like build capital into that relationship. And if we just go through Nelson's principles in relationships, that's going to yield good fruit, just like it would if we apply those principles financially. So I understand wanting to focus on the process over the product or begin with the process, but I also don't think that people should be going through some, business funnel that leads to them signing and filling out paperwork for a life insurance product, and that's the first time that they hear about it. Does that make sense? So yeah, the internet is wild. I think it does matter, where you listen and who you listen to, and does it line up with that original source material, the book as well. Neat. Okay. You also mentioned about financing cars earlier. There's a lot of strong feeling around even something like that. The normal day stuff, the blue collar stuff, the everyday stuff, whether it's financing cars, vacations. I don't know. I keep mentioning this kind of as a side note in conversations with folks. I need to just have an outright conversation on the round table series that I have about this. The whole idea of, can you only use infinite banking for wealth producing ideas, right? Investments, business, versus what Nelson says in the book, use IBC for appliances. Use IBC for just, you know what I'm saying? It's like there are two camps, it seems like, online of no, only use, policy loans for income producing activities. I can understand that. I can appreciate that. I do that. But also, we drive cars, we take vacations. Sometimes the hot water heater goes out. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, I mean, every
Maybe a big,
person's different, so their situation's going to be different. They're going to use their policy different. It's completely up to them. So I feel that 100%.
awesome. Well, that's where I'm at. I'm not here to tell anybody how to use their policy or what to use their policy on. There's an efficient way to use a policy, and I can understand that. But yeah, it's about becoming your own maker. Do it for what you want to do it for. So how long would you say, ballpark? How long would you say, do you remember researching, having these conversations and things, reading the book, looking online, what all you did before you decided to get a policy yourself?
Well, out of all honesty, if from what I can recall, I know it's been a couple years, I was definitely into starting my policy right away. So I did get the connections to get started on my policy, and I'm pretty sure I started the process within the first month. Um, as soon as I was able to connect with Brett Kessler, set up a meeting, all those types of things. During that meantime, I was doing my own research, even throughout the wait period of getting that actual life of policy active. I was still doing my research and due diligently reading my books and things like that, so that when I did have that policy, I was ready to use it, ready to have goals in place to be able to use my policy the way that I wanted, and whether it was a short-term goal, a long-term goal, I had all those lined up and ready to go. So once my policy was active, within it probably wasn't even 2 months after you had introduced that concept to me, I was already approved and I had my policy ready to go. So when I first saw that policy, I jumped right in. I wasn't hanging out, just going to do it in my spare time. I wanted to learn as quickly as possible. So while I was in that process of getting everything set up and done the right way, I was learning as I was going along with it.
I got you. So that's one of those questions where it's important to the individual, but it's not as well, and it's important to people in general, and it's not as well. Meaning, some people, and I don't recommend this, take years to implement the concept from first exposure. It's just that way, right? And then some people just move right away. I think it's interesting to hear that kind of stuff, and I think that it's helpful for other people to hear, oh, this person took, a week. This person took a year. I think that's interesting. And again, I don't recommend waiting. I always think about that parable of the tree, right? The best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The next best time's today, right? So that always comes to mind. So you were verifying, but also moving forward to apply for a policy. What would you say then, anything that you would like to share that you have used a policy for to implement the concept?
Yeah, I mean, I've used the policy. I've taken over the past couple of years several different loans out to help me financially throughout the years. I think the first policy that I started about 6 years ago or so. The first loan I took out was nothing too major because my policy was kind of small starting off, because I just wasn't financially able to do anything more at that point. But I 100% wanted to do it. So I went ahead and stuck my foot in the door for a policy. That first policy, I did take a loan out, and I used it for paying off a high paying credit card, high interest credit card, that was drowning me at this point because I was just paying the minimum every month, and my debt to that credit card was not going down, no matter if I paid on time or not. So when I took that first loan, I did take off that credit card debt, which helped tremendously with some stress on not worrying about having to pay that, as well as taking a family vacation, a small family vacation we were able to do, which was a huge accomplishment, I feel like, because we were still at that paycheck to paycheck before we saw this IBC. So vacations was not really a thing for us. I was very looking forward to that vacation, and we enjoyed it tremendously. And then I feel like another time recently in the past couple of years that I took out a loan was during some life changes that happened. I ended up getting separated from my husband. So when that happened, I left with no car, no job, no house, and 3 kids full time under the age of 5. So I quickly had to figure some things out financially as fast as possible. So the first thing I did was take out a loan. So I took out a loan. I was able to get a car, somewhere to live, and quickly got a job to be able to produce some income to be able to support my kids. I would not have been able to do that without a loan from my policy. So I was very grateful at that point that I had that over the years, because it helped me get on my feet during this hard time and made sure that my kids were, going to be okay while I regrouped and got things together. So that was the biggest point of me, and for the fact that I didn't have to go to a bank for it, because I knew at that point when that I did separate. I had no income. I was a stay-at-home mom for the past couple years, so I had no income whatsoever, record showing. My credit wasn't all that great because I had pulled out a car loan or something a few years ago. That I no longer had. So that was going to be red flags as well. So I knew a bank was not going to loan me any money. So I was able to use my policy to financially save us at that point. That was a big, huge moment for my policy, honestly, to be able to take from that to support us, and then not having to instantly repay right back. With those policy loans, I don't have a set structure to pay the bank back. I'm paying myself back. So when I first started out, I had to take that loan. I did not have extra cash to instantly repay back that loan. So it took me several months to be able to start paying that loan back. So that was a big blessing on that part, because I needed that space to accumulate what needed to be done so that I could pay myself back in the future. So that was a big moment for me on using those policies. And I continue to feel blessed every time. I still take out loans on a regular now. But that one in particular really kind of, I don't want to say it, but like saved my life in in that current moment. It got me off my feet. So now I take out some loans for my businesses that I've started over the years and grown, all thanks to that one initial big loan that I had to take to get off our feet.
I love it. So you can tell me what to say, what not to say here. You can add to whatever I do say, because I don't want you to feel like I'm stealing your thunder, but it's a good opportunity for me to brag on you, because we do talk financials. With you being a client, we look at financials and we look at the nuts and bolts of cash flows and assets and incomes and those types of things, and how you're using the policy. And I'm really proud on what you've done for yourself in that business realm from the time that you're talking about to now. I mean, we even fairly recently had a couple of meetings where we were going over, recent past and business and cash flows and such. And I was really impressed. I'm really proud to see what it is that you've done for yourself, and that even led you to get some new policies. And again, you tell me what not to say, you add, you change, whatever. Okay. But I'm really happy for you, and I'm really proud of you. And it's really cool to have those kinds of meetings where you see how folks are leveling up and improving and advancing and moving forward. It's really cool. I really enjoy it. Those are great meetings for me. And I love the recourse that privatizing your banking gets you for both what I call the obstacles and the opportunities in life. Both those things present themselves. There are great opportunities. You and I get to know each other because an opportunity was presented to somebody that led to me, that led to you. That's how we know each other, is because of a great opportunity. But then also there are obstacles in life as well. And no matter which you're experiencing, or a combination of both of them, having your banking privatized is beautiful in both of those scenarios, for sure. You've covered so much ground. I've got so many questions I feel like I know I'm not going to be able to get back to. But let me ask you this one. So when you had vetted the concept, knew you were going to implement it, now people have even already heard about how you've used policies. And maybe I'll even ask you, Taylor, two questions. I can't give you just one at a time. So is there anything more recently that you would just keep adding to what you were describing then about how you use policy loans, how you use your system of policies for things that you're doing today?
Yeah, so now that I kind of got out of those obstacles, like we were talking about, those were not planned. I did have goals before that, and then an obstacle arises. And of course, I was able to use my policy for those obstacles as well. But now I feel like I don't have any major obstacles in my future at the moment. So I'm kind of looking towards my business aspect and business goals. I have started a couple businesses endeavors since my separation. I do own a small business that rents tubes and kayaks, and I also have a couple rental properties at this point. So now at this point, when using my policy loans, I did just take out a loan. We're using it towards those businesses. So I'm using to remodel some of my rental properties to produce better income. I'm reusing my policy loans for expanding my tubing business and growing in that aspect to produce more income. So I'm using these policies now to produce more income in the future for myself and my generations to come. And that's been a big blessing as well. Again, I don't have to go to a bank for that. I can just pull from my loans of my policies and be able to pay them back in a timely manner, but in a manner that works for me. I know my business, my main source of income is seasonal. My tubing business, it is seasonal, so only 6 months out of the year am I producing that income. So having this policy gives me kind of security for one, and those slower months where I'm not producing that income, but it also gives me that opportunity to repay back loans in a timely manner that's also seasonal. So I don't feel like I have to make this large payment every single month to pay back this loan when I'm in my slower months. I could always pull it off, pay smaller amounts during the slower months, and then my larger amounts in the summer months where I'm the most busiest and I produce the most income. So it's really kind of been a huge blessing in my businesses. And I continue and plan to continue to use those policies to push those businesses and have them grow. And I'm super stoked about it.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you one more bragging point from me to you is seeing how much you have capitalized for yourself, which is so integral, even if somebody's not implementing infinite banking, right? Again, if we were just talking about personal finance and we were just looking at either a scenario of opportunity or obstacle, nobody says to themselves, "Oh my goodness, I've got so much. This is bad." That's not the case, right? It's like the more capital you have, the better positioned you are for obstacles or opportunities, doesn't matter which. So that's really cool for me to have seen what you've done for yourself. And again, that's led to you being able to get multiple policies. Now, let me ask you something that I thought of earlier, because you did get your first policy several years ago. So it's going to be another two-part question. And you've gotten some policies recently. So what are your thoughts on premium when it comes to, or came to, okay, well, back then, here's what I thought. Here's what that first policy was. And you already gave some descriptors, and that's a pretty general trend, that people have smaller policies in the beginning than they do later on, because it's just a matter of growing and scaling over time. But I'd love to, if you could go back into your mindset at that time several years ago, what went through your mind? What were you told? What was helpful? What was harmful? I mean, anything that sticks out to you that you can recall of thinking about what's the appropriate amount of premium for me to pay into this first policy. And then I'll ask you the same thing about policies that you recently got.
Yeah, so I feel like when I first started out, like I said, my policy was relatively small at that point. I was recently decided to not teach anymore and be a stay-at-home mom. So getting a policy on me was doable, but it was not a large amount. We were still paycheck to paycheck. So looking at getting a premium that would work for us, it was relatively small, but I knew I could put that money to the side every month. I could put that money to the side, and I wanted to have some security, some safety, and that kind of emergency fund. So in my mind, when I was setting up that policy, I realized, it wasn't very big, but I knew I could put this little bit amount every month into my policy, just if worst case scenario, an emergency fund. Um, I could save just this much every month just to put in there to make sure that we have this emergency fund if something does happen. So that was kind of my initial mindset, was, putting as much as I can into a policy to have that, for that security purposes, and then later down the road be able to implement and use that policy when needed, and have those goals and stuff set in mind. And I think that was really helpful in my mindset, just to think that I'm paying myself first. I'm having this emergency funds for me and my family. This is here as a blanket to help us for whatever we may need. So to me, it was 100% worth it, even if it was kind of stretching it at that point because we were financially just really tight. It was extremely worth it. And I also had to think long term. I was like, I know things are going to get better. I know my policy is going to get better. I know financially I'm going to get better. And just having that mindset of, thinking long term, thinking of, how to use capital, how to use my assets, how to use everything in general, and not have to worry and stress about going to a bank. I knew I wanted to have something where I can pull from it. I didn't have to wait on the bank to tell me yes or no. I didn't have to worry about paying back high interest rates and things like that. So kind of just collaborating and picking what I could afford and connecting it to why I was doing it and the big reason as to why I needed to do it. I felt the need to do it for me and my family, to get us out of the position that we were in. So yes, my policy was small, but it was big in our eyes. It was big for our family. And we put everything that we could into it at any given point in time because we knew in the long run it would pay off. It would help us financially. So picking a premium, I always just picked, I looked at my finances. I was a very organized person. I knew exactly what every bill was to the cent, how much it was going to cost us, how much grocery was. So I would just look at my lovely outlook of everything that I had laid out, and I'd be like, okay, I can do this much a month. And that's what we're going to start with. And then later down the road, when we're able to, we're going to get more policies and we're going to do better. But this will get our foot in the door because we need to start as soon as possible. Like you said, when's the time the best? Plant a tree.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's some of the things that you were describing there, especially for entrepreneurially minded folks, that helps them grasp infinite banking pretty quick, which is not working on somebody else's time frame or having to ask permission. I mean, like when we see an opportunity, we're ready to go. We're ready to make things happen. Look, when we've done our due diligence, we're ready to just put the money behind whatever the deal is or the business is or the investment is or the whatever is, because we're the ones in charge. We know what's going on. We're ready to go. But if you're relying on banks and then the paperwork and then their time frame, and then you are the interest that you'd be paying a bank, that could be more capital that we could be keeping in this deal or in this business, etc. So those things that you were describing, I think, are really neat. And then the flexibility. Let me go back to this because I'm remembering this that you said about when you took out a policy loan and you had no intention of immediately paying it right back. That's so huge. I don't care if you are an employee, self-employed, you got a big business, you're an investor, you're in whichever one of those quadrants that Robert Kiyosaki talks about. That's helpful for you to be in the driver's seat of paying that back, when you want to pay that back, how you want to pay that back, your time frame, your cash flows. That's the only thing that matters, is what fits for you, because you're the banker. You're the one in that position. You're the one that gets to choose that stuff. That's so important. And then same thing on the premium. Again, I don't care if you're an employee on a set and a regular income, or self-employed where you got seasonal cash flows, or a big business and it's big, or investing and it's lots of ebb and flow there. The flexibility when it comes to premiums, where a policy can be built in a way where it can receive that steady influx, right? But then also, if there's some windfall from something, some business deal closes, it comes to fruition, okay, it's time to put in some extra, having a policy. So that's actually where this thing that you've said twice now, Taylor, of pay yourself first. I love that. That's actually where I think a conversation around product is important, because somebody could read Rich Dad Poor Dad and love that principle of, oh, I should be paying myself first, or The Richest Man in Babylon, or wherever they hear it from, right? But then the question naturally, I think, is, where are we going to pay ourselves first? That money has to go somewhere. So where should we pay ourselves first, right? Is that a savings account? Is that a high yield account? Is that a CD? Is that, money under the mattress or whatever? And then that, I think, does lead us to a natural question and answer of the questions where. The answer, I believe, is a properly structured whole life policy, because of all the advantages that we've covered in your real life scenario and lots of others. Okay. Anything that you'd add to that premium thought then, having gone through this most recent round of looking at things again and getting more policies and paying more premium? Anything new or different, or that you'd add?
I think my outlook on premiums is slightly different now that I've been in this for a couple years now. I think initially I was just ready to get my foot in the door. So that first policy, it was just, just getting in there. That was me. I just wanted to get in there. I think now, though, doing new policies has kind of changed on how I want to use my policies, fund my policies in regards to premiums and things like that. You're the one that kind of helped me get these new policies. So we structured these policies to have a beneficial premium for me to be able to do the goals that I have in mind for my businesses and things like that. So structurally, we've kind of set it up for that. I don't pay monthly anymore. I think annual's a much better way to initiate premiums at this point, but it's all just depends on person by person. But being able to fund these policies and have like that emergency fund, to have those extra availability for cash value if I need to pull loans out now quickly and efficiently. I have better understanding of that, and I feel like our policies are more structured in that area now, whereas before, if I was just paying a couple $100s a month, if I had to immediately pull something in the beginning, you don't accumulate as much. So I couldn't do as much if I need to immediately pull something. Whereas now I feel like we're more structured, and I'm able to put the amount that I think would be most beneficial to me into a premium. And make that, instead of sitting in a savings account, fuel these life insurance policies, in which that I can use still kind of like a savings account, but I'm able to borrow against it, and I'm able to still have that money continuously growing for future purchases, or for, the benefit of life insurance in itself, the death benefit for my children, and all those things like that. So yeah, I think premiums now have kind of changed for me on how I want to fuel those premiums, how much I want to put into my policies. I still, even though I've over the years accumulated some extra savings, in my savings account and things like that, you're the first person I reach out to. And I'm like, okay, I have all of this. Tell me where I need to put it and how I need to structure it so that it benefits my family the most, my children the most. So I always reach out to you for those guidance and directions and where and how much to put into premiums for these policies. And I continue to want to use that to the fullest. And I also continue want to get more policies in the future. The more as my
Right.
funds come in and I can fund it, the more I want to get, and will endeavor those here in the near future as well.
So I know that I'm asking a loaded question by being in the position that I am of, mentor and coach and friend and agent and whatnot in helping you and others, right? I push back, maybe especially on current clients, thinking I'm even more likely to push back, right? Just to try and rethink our thinking, right? So what would you say then for folks that are great savers out there? I'm not saying this is you, Taylor. I'm not saying this is you. But for great savers out there who can feel some reluctance to move money anywhere, even while they are learning about all the advantages of whole life. Why are you smiling so big? I don't understand why you're laughing. Uh, any kind of reluctance that they might feel, what would you say about that? Whether it's you list some advantages about whole life insurance, or just your mindset and working through that, or this alleged person would work through that to move savings into a policy or a system of policies.
I think that's a valid question. I love how you're directing it towards me. So I feel this is new in a way that for the first time in my life, I was financially on my feet. I did have this extra money and savings per se, where I had accumulated it. I did have this emergency fund, and I felt kind of financially secure after several years. Um, and then the initial funding of policies. I knew I wanted more policies. I knew I wanted to put what I had into policies because I did want to continue this concept and I did want to leave a legacy for my kids and things like that. I think I was all aboard for it. That initial step, though, with putting large amounts into policies can also be scary sometimes because I haven't had that financial security before. So the whole feeling was new to me, and even though I understood the concept, at the same time I still am learning every day. So being able to transfer these large funds into a whole life policy, I feel can be scary at this point because when you first initially start, you're giving a large sum if you do annual, or you're putting aside a large amount to pay monthly towards these policies, and you don't instantly see that return. So, me being able to give that money and have it sit there and deciding whether or not to use it, and having that security of, okay, I see those numbers in my bank and I know I can afford groceries this week, is a big jump. So I know I was kind of hesitant when I started these new policies, not for say because I was worried, but because I I just felt comfortable at this point. I've just now got into the traditional what you're supposed to do. Have a family, have a car, have a job, have a home, and it's paid for, and you're working on it, and you have these emergency savings, and then being able to have that security, and then putting it into a policy. You still have to have that patience and long-term outlook to see these policies grow and see the benefit in them. So I think there's always a little first timers on putting, if you are having like large funds or anything like that, putting that somewhere different, that you're not totally comfortable with. You're used to traditional banks or cash or something like that. Putting it somewhere else and knowing that it's going to still be there and still be secure, but not instantly having access to it right away. It can be a scary thing, but you do it anyway, because you got to think it's a bigger picture. And you just got to jump right in and use it and know that it's there. And if it didn't make a difference to me if I have it in my bank account or if I have it in this policy actually does better than my bank account. And I just had to retell myself all the time, like, okay, yep, you feel secure right here in this bank account, but it's not doing what you need to do. You want to change this outlook. You want to change your generations to come, what financial literacy is, and how you pay yourself first, how you have all this extra cash that you can use in the future, and it continuously grows, and you have this security for your children now, which is a big thing. My children don't have access to my bank account, but they will have access to their life insurance policies. So they each have their own life insurance policies. They have access to my policies. So if something did happen to me, they have access to that, not just sitting in a bank account anymore where they couldn't touch it, or it would be quickly diminished if I did pass away at that point. So you just have to reteach yourself and remind yourself of all the benefits of this. So you feel more secure in that. So you always want to go back to what we were taught, how society works, and where you're supposed to put your money. So you always have to refresh your brain, and it's always a new and learning concept of being able to be open-minded and see the benefit for the future, see the benefit for now, see the benefit for your children later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were definitely making me think about what you said earlier about doing what's comfortable, meaning what's normal, what most people does, leads you to what most people have, which is not optimal, right?
Yep.
So if you actually just do opposite, you're probably heading in the right direction. Yeah, I think everything that you're saying there still couples with trust but verify. This is coming from you who's implemented the concept for years. You've paid premiums for years. You've taken policy loans for years. And yet that doesn't diminish feelings, right? Because of our life experience. It doesn't diminish that. So that's the value, I think, in me asking that question and then in you giving that beautiful answer, is because it lets people look behind the curtain, and they have similar feelings as well. We all have to work through, how much premium am I going to pay? And is it like this? And okay, yes, it is. So trust but verify, coupled with everything that you just said right there, I think is hugely important. I'll say one quick thing based off something you also said earlier. Side note, and this is for everybody's benefit that's in this case. I think it's so very valuable for the non-working spouses, the homemakers, anybody staying at home, homeschooling, all that. Everybody needs to be protected. That's my standing point, is that our life is our most valuable asset in this life. Like all the things that we have are based on us being a living human being. So why not start there? And my goodness, I mean, Lauren, and I couldn't begin to express everything that she does and all the value that's brought to our life as a family because of what she does. And there's a huge, huge, huge value on that. And I know that most Americans, number one, are not insured. And then they're definitely not insured enough. And if they have insurance, a third problem typically is they either have something that they thought they had something else, and it's not what they thought that it was, or it doesn't work the way that they thought that it would. I'm just like, that's the typical American situation. So I wanted to say that while I was thinking about it earlier because of what you had mentioned. Is there anything, Taylor, that you would say to bring us up to date, or that I haven't asked that you wish that I had of, or would be valuable to somebody else who's maybe still in that vetting process, especially? I mean, I know that current clients are going to enjoy, and other professionals in the space are going to enjoy hearing, your story. But is there anything in particular that you think would be helpful to somebody who's still in that vetting part of the process?
Yeah, I think, just sometimes you just have to realize while you're learning and growing that you're not going to know everything. I think that's a big point that I've had to overcome over the years is you're not going to know everything initially. It's a lot. It's new. Everything's brand new from what we were traditionally taught. So still being able to put your foot in the door, even though you don't know everything. I think that's a big thing. You'll learn as you go, but just getting it started and implementing it, that's the best knowledge you can get is starting that policy and start using that policy. That's how you learn, that's how you grow. Thinking long term and just having an open mind, I think all that's extremely beneficial. Today's age, we typically think short term. How are we going to get through the day? How are we going to pay for groceries this week? We don't think long term range on how we're going to get our kids through college. How are our kids going to buy a house in 20 years when you see how the market's going at this rate? Like, how are they going to be able to afford those? So, thinking more long term, I think, is extremely beneficial as well. And it'll completely shift your mind at that point once you start thinking long term and thinking of how you're going to finance things in the future, how you're going to leave your kids once you pass away, and how they're going to survive through life, and how are they going to financially support themselves, how are they going to be able to do all these things, and how are they going to use a bank if there even are banks at that point. Something could be completely different. Life changes on a regular, our society changes on a regular. So I think being open and thinking long term is beneficial. I think going ahead and getting your foot in the door, even though you don't understand everything, but knowing deep down in your gut that there's got to be something different than what you're doing right now, because right now what you're doing is not working, and you just have that gut feeling of there's got to be something different. I need to do something different. And just looking into that, finding that outlet that works for you and your family on getting out of the rat race of that struggle and stress and financial obligations that you have, and how are you going to afford this, or can I afford that, or I'll never be able to afford a house because the bank wouldn't give a single mom a loan. Like, they're not going to give you one. You don't make enough, they're not going to give a mom of three a loan to buy a house. So what other outlets can we go to? How can we figure this out? Because you don't have a choice. You have children. You have to continuously move forward in life. So how's the best outlet for you and your family able to do that? And just looking for those outlets and directions to get you off your feet, get you in a better position. And then thinking about your children, if you have a family, or if you're just starting out, or want future generations of your spouse, or whatever it may be, looking for those and understanding that you know we're supposed to help our children, and we're supposed to lead them in the right direction. So let's make sure that we're doing that, and they're not going to end up struggling and stuck like we were at one point.
I love it. Well, I'll tell you what, you've absolutely been a coachable and a teachable person and a pleasure to work with. I had to get that in there, and you know why. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions. You ready?
I'll do my best.
Okay, nice, easy softball right here. What's a recent favorite book or podcast you've been reading or listening to?
Well, honestly, I've been listening to several podcasts from you right now. I know one of my policies I started just recently on my children and myself. So I've been listening into the podcasts that are related to that. Also with business right now is my slow season. So right now I'm kind of diving deep into my businesses and figuring out how I want to structure them for the upcoming year, and how I want to grow with them and produce that income and continuously grow so I can fund more policies in the future. So I've been looking a lot into your YouTube videos, especially into business and the children's leaving legacies right now with them. Um, and I've also been reading some professional personal development books as well. I think that's extremely important to work on your personal development. I kind of alternate in between the two of listening to Nelson Nash book again. I'm currently reading that one again. I read it about 2 months ago, but I'm on it again. As well as reading some personal development books. I think that's crucial. I know a lot of people say it, but actually implementing it is crucial for you, and rereading and understanding how that connects with you financially and in day-to-day life as well.
Mhm. I agree.
I agree. And I love the revisiting of Nelson's book. It does always have new lessons. All right. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
I mean,
What kind of
I knew that,
question
but
is
not everybody
that?
knows that. Listen, some of us have different answers, okay?
No, I agree. Yes, yes, that is true.
Sunrise or sunset?
Ugh, sunset.
Picnic or restaurant?
Picnic all day long. You have to be out
Fire
in
pit
nature.
or movie?
Ooh, fire pit again. Got to be outside in nature. Feel grounded, just relax, peaceful, hear the animals. Can't go wrong with it.
I could appreciate that. All right, then nature. What's one of your favorite places, most interesting places that you visited before?
Great question. Ooh, I've been so many places. Honestly, I feel like one of my top favorites would be the Grand Canyon. Um, we've gone a couple times. We've gone together a time or two. It's just a beautiful scenery. I do live in Western North Carolina, so I am surrounded by mountains. But experience the Grand Canyon the first time is just complete awe. No words can describe what the Grand Canyon is. So I think that was one of my favorite places I've ever been, actually.
I love it. Yeah, I'm not sure what it would take for me to ever become dull to the impressiveness of a place like that one, for sure.
Fascinating.
I agree. What's one of the most impactful things somebody ever said to you?
Mm. It might sound silly, but I had a teacher in high school, which always, goes to teaching and why I kind of chose that career path. But it was simple. All she said was just be yourself and trust your gut. And I know that sounds super simple, but when you're in high school, being yourself can be tricky sometimes. And sometimes you're figuring out yourself at that point. And trust your gut. Like, if it's something you want to do it. If it's something you don't have a good feeling about, don't do it. But trust your gut, and be yourself through the process.
Love that. What characteristic do you value most in somebody?
Mm. I think integrity. Integrity is a pretty good characteristic of mine. And, just being honest and being true to yourself and being true to others and just being able to be your complete and whole self with respect and spreading that across anyone that you meet.
Fantastic. And then this one that I got from our boys, which is if you could, would you rather be able to breathe underwater or fly?
That's like the hardest question of them all. Ah, I would have to say fly because I feel like you can cover more ground flying, and you can see a lot more things. The ocean is very limited. I mean, there's a vast amount of ocean, but I could fly over the ocean and I can take a dive into the ocean if I wanted to. So I think flying would be it for me. I do love to travel as well. I've always been a traveler, continue to enjoy traveling so I could get somewhere much quicker.
Fantastic. We got the answer to your question and your logical and reasoning explanation of behind why you chose that answer. Of
Gotta
course.
do it.
I love it. Taylor, this has been a lot of fun. I've definitely been looking forward to this. Thanks for getting our schedules together for this. It is always especially great for me when I can have a friend and a client on. It's a unique voice. I know it brings a lot of value to other people that, you know, maybe they're at the start of our journey like you and I were years and years ago. So thanks again so much for sitting down.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Jesse, for inviting me on, and I look forward to continuously working together.
Well, that was an absolute pleasure for me. If you would like to learn more, you can put comments down in the comment section along with your questions for these types of interviews. Is there something else that I should be asking? Let me know. You can reach me at durhamtalents.com, and my hope is that you do live and leave a lasting legacy.